The millionaire hired her to fix his public image. She ended up mending his heart instead. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The story begins on a rainy Thursday morning in downtown Manhattan. The soft hum of traffic echoed through the glass windows of a 32nd floor office where Ethan Ward, the 36-year-old CEO of Ward Media Group, stared at his reflection in the black screen of his phone. Just 3 days ago, his photo had been splashed across every news outlet. The millionaire who lost his cool. A charity event, a misunderstanding, and one very public outburst had turned him from America's favorite business prodigy into a PR disaster. His board was furious, sponsors were pulling out, and the internet had turned his name into a punchline. That's when his assistant cleared her throat from the doorway. "Sir, the crisis consultant is here." Ethan didn't look up. "Send her in." The woman who stepped inside wasn't what he expected. No power suit, no arrogance. She looked mid-20s, professional yet soft, a navy dress, a leather-bound notebook, and eyes that studied him with quiet precision. "Mr. Ward," she said calmly, extending her hand. "I'm Claire Bennett. I was told you need help rebuilding your image." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I don't need someone to rebuild me. I just need the media to stop tearing me apart." Claire smiled faintly. "Then maybe we start by showing them the human behind the headline." He raised an eyebrow. "And how do you suggest we do that?" "By making you relatable," she said. "By reminding the public you're not a scandal, you're a person. Someone who can make mistakes and also care." Ethan leaned back, arms crossed. "And how do you plan to convince millions of people that I suddenly care?" Claire hesitated, then opened her notebook. "We stage a relationship, a genuine-looking one. A companion who softens your image. Someone real enough to humanize you." Ethan laughed, sharp and humorless. "So, you want me to fake a girlfriend?" "A partner," she corrected, voice steady. "Someone who brings warmth back into your story. We control the narrative before the press does, and you'll choose me." He stared at her for a long second, testing her resolve. "You?" "Yes," she said simply. "If we hire an actress, it'll look contrived. But if it's your PR manager, that looks organic." Ethan studied her like a puzzle he didn't ask for. She didn't flinch under his gaze. "You're bold, Miss Bennett." "It's part of the job description." The silence stretched between them, heavy but electric. Finally, he stood, walking around his desk, close enough to catch the faint scent of rain still clinging to her hair. "All right," he said, his tone somewhere between challenge and curiosity. "Draw up the terms. No emotions, no real dates. Strictly business." "Of course," she replied, though something in her eyes flickered. He extended his hand, a trace of a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Welcome to the team, Miss Bennett." Her fingers met his warm, steady, confident, and neither of them knew that the contract they just shook on would change far more than headlines. Outside, the storm over Manhattan cleared just enough for sunlight to slip through the glass walls, painting two unlikely partners in a soft golden glow as if fate itself had just pressed record. The next morning, sunlight poured through the glass walls of Ward Media Group. Claire Bennett sat at her desk, reviewing the freshly drafted contract. Every clause was practical, professional, and emotion-proof. Clause 1. The partnership shall remain confidential between both parties and select staff. Clause 2. Any public appearances must align with the image rehabilitation plan. Clause 3. No personal involvement beyond agreed appearances. She read the final line twice. Duration, 90 days, renewable upon mutual consent. Her chest tightened, though she could not explain why. 90 days pretending to be the partner of a man who trusted no one. 90 days to rebuild the reputation of Ethan Ward, the man every headline now loved to hate. At precisely 9 o'clock, Ethan entered, crisp in a gray suit, eyes unreadable. "Is the contract ready?" Claire handed him the folder. He scanned the pages quickly, signing without hesitation. "Good," he said, closing the pen. "Let us begin." Their first task was a press interview scheduled that afternoon. The media expected the reclusive CEO to make a statement. Instead, they would get something far more unexpected, a smiling couple. As the car rolled toward the studio, Claire went over her talking points. We keep it simple, she said. Authentic connection, no rehearsed lines. If they sense it is staged, it will backfire. Ethan smirked. And you are an expert on pretending affection? She glanced at him. I am an expert on perception. There is a difference. He looked away, hiding a faint smile. When they arrived, the press lights hit them instantly. Flashes burst like fireworks. Mr. Ward, is this your new partner? Someone shouted. Claire stepped closer, her hand gently resting on Ethan's arm, part of the plan, but the contact sent an unexpected warmth up her skin. Ethan turned to the cameras, his expression softening almost naturally. Yes, he said calmly. Claire has been a great support through everything. She reminds me that not everything about business needs to be business. The words were rehearsed, yet they sounded sincere. The reporters murmured in surprise. For the first time in months, Ethan Ward did not look like the cold millionaire they had painted him to be. Back in the car, Claire exhaled slowly. You did well, she said. They believed you. You sound surprised, he replied. I am not surprised, she said quietly. Just relieved. The city skyline slid by in silence. For a moment, the tension that had defined their partnership eased, replaced by something fragile, almost human. Later that week, Claire reorganized Ethan's schedule, trimming public appearances, arranging charity events, and coaching him on interviews. The more time they spent together, the more she began to notice the man behind the armor, the way his jaw tightened when he saw online hate comments, the quiet sigh he gave before every meeting, the rare moments he smiled when no one was looking. Late one night, after a long day of meetings, Ethan found her still at her desk, surrounded by papers and a half-empty cup of coffee. You should go home, he said. It is past 11. I just need to finish this proposal, she replied without looking up. You are not being paid to save my company single-handedly. Maybe not, she said softly, but I am being paid to make people believe in you again, and that means I have to believe in you first. He froze for a moment, caught off guard by the sincerity in her tone. Do you? He asked quietly. She looked up then, her eyes meeting his. Yes, she said. Even when you do not believe in yourself. The silence that followed was charged, something neither of them could name. Ethan cleared his throat and nodded toward her coffee. At least drink something that is not 6 hours old. He left, returning a minute later with 2 fresh cups from the staff lounge. Claire blinked. You made coffee? I pressed a button on a machine, he said dryly, handing her one. But his small smile said more than words. For the first time, the distance between them felt less like a line and more like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Neither of them knew it yet, but their carefully built contract was already starting to crumble, not from scandal, but from the quiet danger of 2 hearts beginning to trust again. By the 3rd week, the contract had already taken them far beyond boardrooms and interviews. Claire and Ethan had become the picture-perfect couple in every headline. From scandal to second chances, one article read, showing a photo of them laughing during a charity event she had arranged. The plan was working. Public favor had shifted, investors were calmer, and the company's reputation was slowly repairing itself. Yet behind the smiles and press photos, something real was beginning to stir. Something neither of them had agreed to in the contract. One evening, Claire accompanied Ethan to a private dinner hosted by a longtime investor, a powerful man known for his skepticism. The dining hall shimmered with gold light and hushed conversation. Claire, in a simple black gown, carried herself with quiet confidence. Ethan leaned in slightly as they took their seats. Remember, he whispered, he likes sincerity, not sales talk. She gave a faint smile. I can do sincerity better than most. Through the meal, she skillfully redirected the conversation away from the scandal and toward Ethan's philanthropic projects. She spoke of his plans to launch an education fund and how much he cared about mentorship. Every word she said painted him not as the cold businessman the media had condemned, but as a man with purpose. The investor studied her, then nodded with approval. It seems you have found someone who believes in you, Ethan, he said. That can change everything. When they left the restaurant, the air outside was cool and smelled faintly of rain. They stopped under the streetlight, the city buzzing quietly around them. You were incredible in there, Ethan said, genuine admiration in his voice. You made him believe every word. I did not make him believe, Claire said softly. I told the truth. He frowned slightly. The truth? That you are not who they think you are, she said. You are better. For a long moment he looked at her, really looked at her, as if he was seeing her for the first time. You talk like you know me, he murmured. Maybe I am starting to, she replied. The silence stretched, the kind of silence that felt like the air right before lightning strikes. Then he looked away, clearing his throat. We should head back. But that night, long after they returned to the office, Ethan could not stop replaying her words. You are better. It had been years since anyone said that to him without wanting something in return. Over the following days, Claire began spending more time at his penthouse, organizing his schedule and reviewing his upcoming charity appearances. The boundaries between professional and personal hours blurred quietly. She noticed how he stayed up late sketching designs for a new community center. He noticed how she hummed softly when she was deep in thought. One night, as thunder rolled over the skyline, they worked side by side in his home office, surrounded by papers and the low hum of rain against glass. Claire rubbed her eyes. You need rest, Ethan said, setting down his pen. So do you, she replied, without looking up. The difference, he said with a faint grin, is that I pay you to tell me that, she chuckled softly. Then maybe I should charge extra for honesty. The sound of her laughter lingered in the air, soft and unguarded. For the first time in months, Ethan felt the weight on his chest ease. He leaned back, watching her tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear. You know, he said quietly, this was supposed to be just business. She met his eyes. And now? Now, he said, hesitating for once. I'm not sure what it is anymore. The thunder outside grew louder, the kind that made the city pause. Claire closed her notebook slowly, her pulse quickening. Then maybe we both need to remember the rules, she said gently. The contract. Ethan gave a half smile. Right, the contract. But as their eyes held for one long, fragile second, both knew that piece of paper no longer held the power it once did. Something deeper had already taken root, quietly, dangerously, beautifully, between them. By the next month, the transformation was complete. Ethan Ward, once labeled the arrogant millionaire, was now the face of redemption. Magazine covers called him the man who changed. His social media was filled with photos of charity visits, volunteer work, and smiling beside Claire at public events. The public believed every frame, but what neither of them expected was how easily fiction had begun to feel like truth. Late one Friday evening, after a gala event downtown, the limousine crawled through the quiet streets of Manhattan. Claire leaned her head against the window, watching raindrops chase each other down the glass. The echo of laughter from the ballroom still lingered in her ears, laughter that felt too real for a lie. Ethan's voice broke the silence. You were incredible tonight, he said. Even the board members looked like they were ready to nominate you for sainthood. She smiled faintly. Maybe they were just relieved to see you smiling for once. You noticed that? He asked. I notice everything, she replied softly. That is what you hired me for, remember? He turned his gaze toward her reflection in the window. That is what I thought I hired you for. The car stopped in front of his penthouse, and they rode the elevator up in silence. Inside, the city lights shimmered below like a sea of stars. Claire slipped off her heels, laughing quietly when her ankle cracked. That sound means you work too hard, Ethan said, loosening his tie. I am fine, she said, walking toward the bar. Just a little coffee, and I will survive. Coffee at midnight? He asked, amused. Some of us do not turn off after the cameras stop. She poured 2 cups, handing him one. You, of all people, should understand that. He accepted it, their fingers brushing just slightly. The touch was brief but charged, like a spark neither wanted to admit existed. They sat across from each other, the sound of rain filling the room. Tell me something, he said suddenly. Why do you do this job? Fixing people like me. Claire looked at him, her expression unreadable. Because everyone deserves a second chance, she said. Even if they do not believe it. Do you? He asked. Do you believe people can change? She hesitated. I have to, she said finally. If not, what would be the point? He nodded slowly, staring at her as if searching for the truth beneath her calm words. Then maybe you are better at saving people than you think. I am not saving anyone, she said quietly. I am just trying to help you survive the storm you built. And what if, he said, his voice low, I do not want to survive it anymore? Claire froze. There was a weight behind those words, exhaustion, loneliness, something heartbreakingly human. She set her cup down, her voice gentler now. Then you find something worth holding on to, she said. Something real. He leaned forward slightly. And what if I already have? Her breath caught, but before she could respond, his phone buzzed sharply on the table. A message flashed across the screen, a gossip blog headline. Is Ethan Ward's relationship just an image stunt? Ethan cursed under his breath. They will not let this die. Claire took the phone and read the article. It is speculation, she said calmly. We can manage it. No, he said, standing abruptly. You should not have to manage this. You do not deserve to be dragged into my mess. This was never just your mess, she replied firmly. We made this plan together. He looked at her for a long moment, torn between gratitude and something deeper. You should go home, he said quietly. Get some rest. She nodded, though her heart ached as she walked toward the door. But before she stepped out, Ethan spoke again, his voice softer. Claire, she turned slightly. Thank you for making me believe in something again. She smiled faintly. You are welcome, she said, and left him standing in the glow of city lights, holding a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. He stared out the window long after she was gone, the rain tracing lines against the glass, wondering when pretending had started to feel like the only real thing left in his life. The following week was chaos disguised as calm. The article questioning their relationship had gone viral, spreading through every major outlet within hours. Ethan's PR team was in overdrive, but the whispers only grew louder. Is the millionaire's new image built on a lie? Read one headline. Claire tried to stay composed, working through endless calls and emails, crafting statements that might calm the storm. Yet beneath her professionalism, she felt something she had not felt in a long time: fear. Not fear of failure, but fear of losing what had become real between them. One afternoon, she stood by the conference room window, watching the city stretch endlessly below. Ethan entered quietly, his expression unreadable. We need to talk, he said. She nodded, bracing herself. They want us to do a live interview, he continued, to prove the relationship is real. A live interview? She repeated. That could destroy everything if we slip even once. I know, he said. That is why I want you there with me. You are the only one I trust. The words hit her harder than she expected. Ethan, she said softly, this is not about trust anymore. It is about truth. He frowned. You think we should come clean? I think, she said, taking a breath. We have been pretending for so long that we forgot what pretending feels like. He looked at her. The tension between them sharp enough to hurt. You said everyone deserves a second chance, he said. So maybe this is mine to make something real out of what started as fake. She stared at him, unable to respond. The truth was, she wanted to believe him. That night, the interview aired live from a rooftop studio overlooking Manhattan. The skyline glowed behind them, the wind teasing strands of Claire's hair as cameras rolled. The host smiled too brightly. Mr. Ward, Miss Bennett, she began. Some people say your relationship was created to fix your image. What do you say to that? Ethan looked at Claire before answering. I say that sometimes life gives you exactly what you need, even if it starts as something you did not plan. The host pressed. So, is this relationship real? The question hung in the air. Claire's heart pounded. Every instinct screamed to keep the illusion intact, but something inside her refused to lie anymore. She turned to Ethan, her voice steady but soft. When I first met Ethan, she said, I thought he was the most difficult client I would ever have, and maybe he was. But somewhere along the way, between all the rules and the appearances, I stopped acting, because what I felt was not scripted. The studio fell silent. Ethan's eyes softened, something raw flickering behind them. Neither was mine, he said quietly. The host blinked, caught off guard. So you are saying? Ethan turned to the camera. I am saying that sometimes the truth looks exactly like a lie until you feel it for yourself. The interview ended in stunned silence, and within hours the clip flooded the internet. Instead of backlash, the reaction was overwhelming support. Maybe love can start anywhere, one comment read. Even in a contract. By midnight, Claire was back at her apartment, exhausted but strangely light. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Ethan. Asterisk, meet me at the rooftop tomorrow, no cameras. Asterisk, The next evening the city was quieter. She found him standing where they had filmed, hands in his pockets, the wind tugging gently at his hair. "I should thank you," he said, "for telling the truth." "It was time," she said. "You taught me that." He took a step closer. "No, you taught me to be human again." Claire smiled faintly. "Then maybe we are even." "Not yet," he said, his voice low. "Because there is still one thing I have not done without a contract telling me to." She raised an eyebrow. "And what is that?" Ethan looked at her for a long moment before saying softly, "Ask if I can keep you in my life. For real this time." Her heart fluttered in her chest. "You are asking?" she whispered. "I am asking," he said. The city lights shimmered between them, bright and endless, as if the skyline itself was holding its breath. For the first time in months, the world seemed to slow down for Ethan and Claire. The chaos, the press, the noise, all of it faded into something distant. After the rooftop confession, the world had turned their story into a fairy tale, calling it the most unexpected love story of the year. But away from the cameras, things felt simpler. The next morning, Claire arrived at the office to find a bouquet of white lilies on her desk with a note that read, "No meetings today. Let me steal you for a few hours." She smiled despite herself. A few hours later, Ethan's car pulled up in front of her building. He was dressed casually for once, his sleeves rolled up, his usual sharpness softened. "You are kidnapping me now?" she teased as she got in. "Technically," he said, "it is a work-related morale exercise." "Morale exercise?" she echoed. "I did not know that was in the contract." "That is because," he said with a grin, "there is no contract anymore." The car drove north, away from the city, into open skies and quiet roads lined with autumn trees. They stopped by a lakeside cafe an hour later. It was small, quiet, and breathtakingly peaceful. Claire leaned on the railing, watching the ripples dance across the water. "You really know how to disappear from the world," she said. "It helps," he admitted. "Sometimes I forget there is a world beyond headlines." "And when you remember?" she asked. "Then I remember why I am still in it," he said softly, glancing at her. Her cheeks warmed under his gaze. They spent the afternoon walking along the lake, talking about everything they had never dared to before their childhoods, regrets, and the strange loneliness that success always seemed to bring. For the first time, Ethan talked about his father, a man who had built an empire but had never taught his son what peace felt like. "He used to say emotions were distractions," Ethan said quietly. "That caring made you weak. And do you believe that?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not anymore, not since you." She looked at him then, realizing how different he seemed. The arrogance that had once defined him was gone, replaced by something quieter, more real. They sat on a bench overlooking the lake as the sun began to set. The sky was painted in streaks of gold and pink. "You know," Claire said, "for someone who started out trying to fix his image, you ended up fixing something else instead." He smiled faintly. "Myself?" "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe you just let yourself be seen for once." He leaned closer, his voice low. "And you, Miss Bennett? Did you fix me or break your own rules?" Her lips curved into a smile. "Maybe both." The wind carried the sound of her laughter, and for a brief, perfect moment, nothing else mattered. Later that night, back in the city, they stood together in front of the Ward Media headquarters. The company's name gleamed in steel letters above them. Ethan turned to her, his tone gentle but serious. "Claire, I want you to take over the foundation we talked about, the education fund. You started it, and I want you to lead it." "Me?" she said, startled. "That is your project." "It was," he said. "But you gave it life. You believe in it more than I ever could." She hesitated, emotion tightening her throat. "You do not have to do this for me." "I am not," he said. "I am doing it because I trust you." She smiled, blinking back tears she did not want him to see. "Then I will make it something worth trusting." "You already did," he said quietly. For a long moment, they stood in silence as the city lights shimmered around them. The contract that had once bound them was gone, but something far stronger had taken its place: trust, respect, and something that looked a lot like love. As they walked side by side into the building, Ethan glanced at her and said softly, "You know, Claire, you were supposed to fix my reputation, but you ended up rewriting my entire story." She laughed lightly. "I guess that makes us even." "Not even," he said, smiling. "Just beginning." And for the first time, both of them believed it. The calm did not last forever. Just as the world began to believe in Ethan's transformation, an old rival returned to challenge it. One Monday morning, Claire arrived at the office to find the lobby buzzing with reporters again. Ethan stood in front of the elevator, his jaw tight, his phone pressed to his ear. When he saw her, his expression darkened. "Someone leaked our internal documents," he said. "The charity fund, the contracts, everything. They are calling it a publicity scam." "That is impossible," Claire said. "All of that was legitimate." "It does not matter," he replied. "The headlines do not care about the truth." Within hours, their work was being torn apart by the same media that had once celebrated them. Investors were calling, board members were panicking, and the foundation's launch was suddenly on hold. That evening, Claire found Ethan alone in his office, the city lights flickering against the windows. He looked exhausted, shoulders heavy with defeat. "You should not be here," he said quietly. "This is going to get ugly." "I am not leaving you," she said. "We started this together." He turned to face her, anger flashing in his eyes. "You do not understand, Claire. They are saying I used you, that the entire thing was staged again. They are going to dig into your past, your career, everything." She crossed her arms. "Let them. I have nothing to hide." "You have your reputation," he said sharply, "and you should protect it." "And what about yours?" she asked. "You spent months proving you are not the man they said you were. Are you really going to let them take that away?" He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "You still think I can fix this?" "No," she said softly. "I think we can." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, slowly, the anger in his eyes faded, replaced by something heavier. Fear, regret, love. "You do not deserve this," he whispered. "You deserve peace." "Maybe peace is not what I want," she said. "Maybe I just want the truth." The next morning, Claire held a press conference at the foundation headquarters. Cameras flashed, voices shouted, but her voice stayed calm. "This organization was built to help people, not to fix anyone's image. If you want to question its integrity, question mine, because I built it." Her honesty silenced the room. When Ethan joined her on stage, he did not bring lawyers or notes, just a single sheet of paper. "This," he said, holding it up, "was the contract that started everything between us. I am tearing it up now because I do not need paper to prove what is real." He ripped it cleanly in half, the sound echoing through the hall. The room fell silent, cameras frozen, flashes fading. Then, one by one, reporters began to applaud. It was not about the contract or the scandal anymore, it was about courage. That night, as the noise of the day finally faded, Ethan and Claire stood together on the rooftop once more. "You just turned a scandal into a redemption story," he said quietly. "No," she replied, smiling faintly. "We just told the truth, again." The wind brushed between them, carrying away the last pieces of paper that had once defined their fate. The days that followed were quiet but heavy with aftermath. The scandal had burned bright, but the truth had burned brighter. The public began to see the sincerity in Claire's words and Ethan's actions, and slowly, the chaos began to fade. Yet in the silence that remained, both of them were left to face what was real between them now that the lies were gone. One evening, as the city settled into twilight, Claire found herself back at the foundation's office, reviewing final reports. The door opened quietly behind her, and she looked up to see Ethan standing there, a familiar half-smile on his face. "You should not still be working," he said softly. "You are one to talk," she replied, smiling faintly. He walked closer, his voice lower now. "Do you ever think about how far we have come, from fake headlines to this?" She nodded. "Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. Sometimes it feels like yesterday." "Do you regret any of it?" he asked. Claire paused, searching his face. "Regret? No. But I wish I had been honest with myself sooner, about what I wanted, about how much you mattered." He exhaled slowly, the admission hitting him like a quiet wave. "You just said what I have been trying to say for weeks." "Then say it," she whispered. He stepped closer, close enough that the faint hum of the city below was the only sound between them. "I do not care about image or headlines anymore. I just care about you. Every version of you, messy, tired, stubborn, honest. You are the only thing that ever made all of this make sense." Her heart pounded, but her voice stayed steady. "And what happens when the world forgets this story?" "Then we write our own," he said simply. Claire smiled through the tears she did not try to hide. For once, there were no cameras, no contracts, no roles to play. Just two people standing in the quiet glow of everything they had fought for. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "This is not part of any PR plan," he said softly. "It is just me, asking you to stay. Not because the world is watching, but because I am." She stared at him, tears glistening in her eyes. "Ethan," she whispered, "you are serious?" "Completely," he said, "for the first time in my life." The sound of the city faded beneath them as she nodded, a single word leaving her lips. "Yes." And for the first time, it was not an answer to a question, but a promise. A year later, the story that had once been called The Contract Couple had become something entirely different. The foundation that Claire built and Ethan funded had grown into one of the most trusted charities in the country. The media no longer asked if their love was real. They had long stopped needing to. On a warm afternoon in early spring, the garden outside the foundation's new headquarters was filled with laughter and soft music. Friends, colleagues, and families gathered around white tables decorated with lilies, her favorite. Claire stood near the archway, her dress simple but elegant, sunlight touching her hair like gold. Ethan approached from behind, adjusting the cufflinks she had given him months ago. "Ready?" he asked, his voice warm. She turned, smiling. "I have been ready for a long time." They walked hand in hand toward the small group waiting for them. No cameras, no press, just the people who had witnessed their journey from scandal to sincerity. The officiant smiled. "We are not here because of contracts or headlines," he said. "We are here because two people decided to choose honesty every single day." Ethan squeezed her hand, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "No more pretending. No more contracts," she whispered back. "Just us." When he kissed her, the world seemed to pause, the same world that once watched them fall apart now watched them find peace. Later, as the evening sky turned golden, Claire looked around the garden, the laughter, the faces, the life they had built together. "You know," she said softly, resting her head against his shoulder, "you hired me to fix your image." He smiled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "And you ended up mending my heart instead." The sun dipped behind the skyline, the city lights flickering to life, and for the first time, their story finally felt complete.